every system, there's a signal, a pulse, a spark that cuts through the noise. Some call it innovation, some call it disruption. We call it the protocol. So plug in, power up, and follow the signal. This is Neon Protocol.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Neon Protocol. I'm Gene, and with us we have Damon, Mike, and Dan from the Neon Protocol team. And today we're being joined with Coray Seifert, who is, I'll let him introduce himself, but absolutely fantastic storyteller who brings a very unique lens to this immersive technology and some of the solutions that we talk about on this podcast. So, Coray, before I even go any further, I'll let you actually go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Sure, yeah. Hi, Coray Seifert. I've been in games and simulation technology for about 20 years. Kind of got my start in the AAA shooter space. Over sort of the back half of my career, I've been more on the emerging tech side, a lot of XR, a little bit of AR, just as we're starting to dip our toes into it. Most recently, I was at Meta. Before that, I was at NVIDIA and Autodesk. I recently started a publisher for primarily XR content, but also PC console called Dark Arts Syndicates, and I'm the chief creative officer there.
Nice. So, and we also had Mark that joined. I want to make sure I don't forget about him. No, that's actually fantastic. Rather than asking about that, if you were part of the collateral damage, that a lot of the XR industry is going through right now, and I think we could probably trauma bond over that for the next 3 or 4 hours. Especially even with Lenovo's announcement, I guess earlier today, that they're closing shop on their XR and they're moving everything to wearables. So we'll see what the fallout of that is. But rather than talk about that, I would actually love to know more, and I think we all would, of the dark arts. Not that we please share the dark arts with us.
Well.
No, it's more of, let's bring out the positive of what you're doing, because I think it also really helps to know, just your background of storytelling, even that you write novels and you've really expanded. So I'd really love to know what the dark arts company, not the dark arts practice, is for.
Sure, yeah, and if you'll forgive a brief tangent, I was a game writer for 20 years. I found myself kind of moving more into the leadership side. And it became harder and harder to write professionally, right? You just sort of get sucked into all these meetings all day, and you don't have time to lay down 20 versions of I'm reloading. So I missed it quite a bit, and I started to explore long-form fiction. And my first manuscript, I should say, I didn't actually get it to publish yet, was a book called Time Augmented, where this plucky group of scientists need to use augmented reality technology to find a cure for a global pandemic. And I wrote it before COVID, which was weird. So that was an interesting one. And the reason this is super relevant is one of my beta readers for that was Melissa Brown, former global head of developer relations for Meta, who I'm convinced hired me at Meta in part because of my very shitty first manuscript, because Nice. It was, all AR futurism. I wrote a whole novel about like how cool AR is going to be, plus dinosaurs. And I think that like love of futurism has been a through line in my career, right? Autodesk, I got to work on like these like cool early samples with DK2. NVIDIA was a lot of like digital twin kind of stuff. And obviously at Meta, we just published a ton of games. The thing that we're doing at Dark Arts is basically the big lessons we learned at Meta, which they're not terribly different than any software development, but they're maybe exacerbated by the modern audience. The modern audience we're finding is hesitant to engage in new content because everyone's got these games and products that have, bi-weekly updates, long roadmaps, annual battle passes. It's just like a feast of content. And so people are like, yeah, I've got my 3 or 2 or 1 or 3, whatever, however many games I play, I'm fully scheduled for my gaming, right? And the only way that we found you break through with that is you do not the traditional, hey, let's throw $20 million at something and see if it sticks. You do 10 quick little prototypes, send it out to like these online communities, and then see what sticks and reinvest in that. So that's kind of like the model behind Dark Arts. It's build with the community, build with this very modern development sensibility. And obviously, XR is a big part of that. And I think, if you're starting a business now and you're not looking at wearables / AR, that's a pretty hard way to start things and get momentum. So obviously we have a toe in that.
Of course, you have to follow the wildfire wherever it may lead, because we're hoping it'll eventually lead back to it. I mean, I still remember yesterday I was a post in LinkedIn came up saying the XR immersion boom is up right upon us. And then today you read about Lenovo, and it's like, all right, maybe we need to take a step back for a second and kind of reevaluate.
You got a point there, man. I just replaced the batteries in my PS3 controller, and I just finished Ratchet and Clank. And you know what? That's 20 years ago, and I still like it. And you know, it's hard to top it. And you raise a point. Well, this is for everybody. We have so many things competing for our attention. You can only wear one headset at a time. Trust me, I've tried. So there's we're blessed with all these amazing things that we can do and what little free time we have, and so it's hard to compete. It really is.
Yeah, and I also find the game itself makes it hard as well. Whereas 20 years ago, it was okay, a game every month would get released, and it was a relative, sometimes they were relatively good, but every game had that same price point. Now you can buy all these different games, you could get all these different levels. And what I found is by having all this add-on content, and I think, Coray, this is where I really want to pick your brain, because the storytelling is what I love, is we've lost the idea of the story behind the game. All we're looking for is the game, the game strategy of here's your prize, here's your prize, here's your prize, rather than having the story carry the game. Whereas even the silly games, the story was fantastic. Like Link, I think we all say Legend of Zelda is one of our most favorite games. Wasn't the most high-tech game, but the story was beautiful.
I think, what's wild is I think that statement rings true, especially if you look at the past, call it 10 years of, game development and publishing. What's interesting is to the point that we were just talking about, it's all becoming a red ocean, right? Like mobile free to play is really hard to make money in right now, right? Online first person shooters and live operations, tons and tons of competition, all of it executed at an impossibly high level. And so if you go to the first principles numbers, right? What segments are growing? Basically the only segments that grew last year, or the only segments, was like indie games on PC, which had 30% growth, while everything else was like flat or less than 10%. And I think there's some very cool examples, one of which I'm obsessed with, and I would love to spend the entire podcast talking about. It's called Dispatch. It's barely a game, but the writing and acting, it's got the guy from Breaking Bad, science, Aaron, that guy. I should know this. He's incredible. He did an amazing job with the main character. Just phenomenal writing, phenomenal acting. Mecha Man, exactly. I will look up his name. He's super famous, and I'm just blanking right now. But like that game, barely a game, only a story to tell, really, and it is incredibly successful.
Well, there's one game I still go back to. I think it's the gameplay was very much pick your ending, but Heavy Rain that was on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
That story was just, I mean, to me, it was the first time I truly felt like I was playing a movie.
Yeah.
It really
absolutely
did.
It's that feeling.
Yeah, and so this kind of gets into that question, not to completely derail the conversation from games. I think we could all talk about the games and all this all night long. But when we were preparing for tonight, one of the questions that really kind of came into my head, because I've done enterprise VR, and I think all of us in the community, we've all shared our war stories of doing enterprise VR. And one of the things I started noticing about enterprise VR is there's no story behind it. So like you'll find the safety trainings.
It depends where you work. I'll leave it at that.
No,
Ooh.
which Mark I appreciate, because the safety trainings I saw I've seen at several companies, it's just putting them in a situation where you have to go up the scissor lift. Well, why do I have to go scissor lift?
It's procedure based, not story based.
But could a story? I guess that now this is where the question comes into it. Could story based help the integration of it? Is there greater value in have it story versus procedure based? Let the battle of wits begin.
Many of us here have a gaming background. I mean, some of the first immersive stuff we did for enterprise, large enterprise, was gamified training in the browser, 3D. I mean, I'm gonna date myself a little, but that's okay with you guys. Shockwave, like, hey, can you help us train the people that are selling these cars or making these, building these buildings? And if you gamify it correctly and you give people incentive and you let them compete, it works. If you put a story on that, it works great. Now, they're not able to be as creative or take it as far, but that supported a whole bunch of small developers for 20 years working on serious games, right?
Well, yeah, but when I guess where I'm coming is like when the budget comes into play. Okay, I've seen people sacrifice the story for the process. So sorry, Dan, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Sacrifice the story for the cost.
Well, also at the same time, like any kind of computer-based training, at least in front of a screen. I mean, we all love XR here, but any kind of CBT, as we used to call them, that we had to do, we're like skip, because we felt like it was a punishment. So then you introduce a story. It's like, I don't want to hear your goddamn story. I just want to knock this out. So I don't know. Sometimes it's like a story isn't appropriate because it's like you're just going to make me angry. Like it might be beautiful, it might be compelling, it might change my behavior forever, but time and a place.
Okay, actually, I have a great example of time and a place. So, and this is gonna be a weird connection, but one of the projects we're currently working on, we're helping a company called XRT do training simulations for medium armor vehicles for the Marines, right? That's kind of complicated. It can go on land, it can go on water. It's a boat and a car. It's a whole thing, right? And when you hear the simulation running, it sounds like a game of Dungeons and Dragons, but Call of Duty Modern Warfare themed, because the person on dispatch does all this cool. I can't even replicate. It's like, Captain, you've got 3 hostiles on your 10 forward, move into position, Delta. I'm like, guys, you got to write this stuff down and like make a movie out of this. This is awesome. It's like, like it sounds so badass, but it's not a linear story, right? It's almost like Dungeons and Dragons. Like there's like a DM, a GM, and then the crew is like completing this training objective, and that's how they make it really cool. It's not exactly authored story, but it is. Yeah, I need to play D&D with that group. Incidentally, it was Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad.
You know what? That's something we could start too. A Neon Protocol D&D group.
There you go.
Yo, there does exist what I call the ARP groups for XR. A bunch of us do, Foundry and stuff like that as a way to de-stress, what's going on. But yeah, so yeah, Coray could probably share some awesome D&D stories. Yeah.
I think actually, if I could share one that I really enjoyed,
go for it.
So I probably should have mentioned, I kind of got into VR first at a company called Experiment 7. We made Catan VR, and we did a game called Dungeon Chess, which is chess with the D&D characters. And when we were pitching that, they invited us to a VIP Dungeons and Dragons game at GDC. This is the coolest thing I've ever done. And the DM was Chris Perkins, who was running was it Acquisitions Incorporated, and it was like one of the designers on all of D&D, right? And I was there with Chris Journey, who is the head of publishing at Meta, and so we all rolled up, some one-shot characters, and the only thing that we could customize was our name, right? Because you got like 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
So everyone goes around the table, and it's like, I'm Ragnar the Great, right? I'm et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then Chris Journey says his character name, which was something great, right? And then I said, I'm Chris Journey. which Chris Perkins lost his shit. So I actually got Chris Perkins to he did the equivalent of shooting milk out your nose. And so at a VIP D&D game, and the whole time, then Chris Perkins would go, Chris Journey, what do you want to do? And he would look at me sitting next to Chris Journey. It was amazing. I will never do a funnier thing than that.
That's awesome. I'm like, the only way you could top it is just tell him he doesn't know the rules to the game.
At one point, and actually, I don't know if you can see it behind me, I have a framed player's handbook first page. It's signed by Chris Perkins, and under it, it says, "Where are the decapitation rules?" Because I cut off someone's head and wanted to use it as a projectile, and this is when they were first rolling out 5th edition. And he's like, I think we have to buff up our decapitation rules.
Wow.
Okay, show over. Let's go. Nothing's better than that.
I peaked a couple years ago, let's admit it, but
It happens to all of us.
Absolutely. We're all on the second incline.
Mm-hmm.
I just look at it as I'm Sisyphus. The rock has rolled down. I'm just pushing it right back up again.
Yep, this is the way.
Go from there, Gene.
I definitely took us offline. Sorry.
No, but no, because we're having fun with games, and I think this actually can lead into a really good topic, is because the gaming industry, I think, has always been a really good kind of indicator of where technology is going to go, or how it's going to be presented, because we're able to test a lot in games before we bring it to a function. Now, getting with that, and going back to being able to play games from any platform, to be able to go through. One of the big gaming companies recently has been making some relatively big news, because they want to go to an all digital subscription platform, where instead of being able to buy the game, you buy a license to the game, and you apparently have to check. I think you have to check in once every 30 days. I don't know. I could be mistaken, so nobody quote me on that. But I know there's different requirements.
90 days. I think it might be initially 90 days.
Yeah, but in other words, but you can't be offline. There's a lot, and so the question of, do we own it digital? Do we own it physical? But with this company doing that, and another company who, with their new CEO, is kind of going back to the old style. With you being in the industry, I guess, what are your thoughts with what's going on? I would really love to know, for those of us that aren't used to the gaming industry.
Sure. No, it's a fascinating conundrum, right? If you look at it on the surface, it's oh, those guys are being evil, and those guys are not being evil, right? And yeah, I don't know, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But what's really, I think, more interesting is what the consumer response is, because the games industry exists because of consumers, and consumers tell us what they want, and then we make it. So if company A says, yeah, you don't get a physical copy, you got to check in every 90 days or whatever, and gamers hate it, that company is going to go out of business and get eaten really quickly. If gamers don't care, they're going to do great, because they the financial benefit to them of being able to ensure basically 0% piracy, high integrity for cheating and hacking. There's a bunch of ancillary benefits that come with that. And then vice versa, right? If people care that they get a physical copy and that there's license integrity on the individual, great. That company is going to reap the benefits, and the other company will be at a competitive disadvantage. And because there's so many people making games at such a high level, if you're not doing what consumers want, you're done. It's not even oh, you're gonna backslide for 10 years and you'll eventually go out of business. You all see what happens, right? So I think what's gonna be fascinating is what's the consumer response to that over the next 6, 12, 18 months, and then how do people react? So I think if you talk to your average person in the industry, they're like, yeah, that's a big situation. I wonder how it's gonna play out. Yeah.
Well, no, it just makes me curious, because it seems like the gaming industry, I think we've joked about it, but is really kind of leaning into the subscription based, where you're paying licensing now rather than paying for ownership.
That's interesting. I think it depends on how you measure it. Um, so one of our things that we observed working at Meta was like a lot of your free to play games got a lot of the ink, right? Because it's just tons and tons of players. Everyone can just jump in. It's easy to log back in. It helps with retention engagement, right? They're super for platforms. So platforms want to put them right on the cover because that's what platforms want. They want retention. They want engagement, and then revenue follows. What's interesting is that if you look at the top grossing games and the games that actually like stay, or companies that stay alive, most of those are premium, right? Because your average user doesn't put any money in, and your average spending user puts very little money in. And most free-to-play games launch, faceplant, and go out of business. We have a bit of survivorship bias because we only see the ones that are successful. So for us, as gamers, or even just people looking at the industry, it feels like the only games that are successful are these like subscription-based free-to-play ones. But if you work on the platform side, and you're looking at the revenue and the companies that actually continue to like ship games and stay in business and continue to make a profit, it's it probably changes every 6 months, but you'd be shocked at how many premium first developers are actually making the money and actually staying in business, relative to the sort of like churn rate of free to play.
Yeah.
But you are right though, in that like the thing we see, it's a lot of free to play, it's a lot of subscription based, it's a lot of live services.
Well, something I don't understand about the industry at large. My favorite game is VTOL VR. And as far as I know, it's made by one guy. And it's actually an inspiration for me in my business, because it's like, if one guy can build all that, I can build a lot of stuff too. So that's one of the thoughts I have when I wake up in the morning. So I kind of got to wonder, if you got 1,000 employees and it costs $200 million to make a game, and one dude did it, probably already working a 9 to 5, these things don't add up in my head. I don't fully understand this. How does this work?
Yeah, it's look at the guy that created Minecraft.
Yeah, Notch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, are you kidding me? Not only did his game become a sensation, I kind of feel like overnight, but it ended up teaching computer science. I mean,
Yeah.
It just completely unbelievable what he was able to do with it.
Yeah, I think again, it's like a little bit of survivorship bias, because like if you think about how many like solo devs release games that don't do anything, which is not to say that they're not great games, right? Greatness, game quality is often completely divorced from can you make money on it, because that's a question of publishing and market fit. But think about how many people make fantastic games as solo devs and they don't turn into Minecraft or VTOL, I guess. Actually, I don't know if VTOL is a runaway hit, but that sort of like lottery ticket of the solo dev that makes it big is definitely the vast majority. But again, it's impossible for us to see all of the failures, because how could you, right? Like where in your lived experience do you encounter failed games unless you made them, right?
Yeah.
But Coray, that's accelerating, right? I mean, with just technology that's available now, the number of developers and creatives out there that are able to publish games across all these different platform models it's just accelerating. So, I mean, it almost feels like game development is starting to become like social creators. There's that many of them,
Yes, though I think to the earlier question of like, why do you need 1,000 people working for 10 years on a game? There's certain segments that have specific demands, right? Like open world RPGs. I don't know that there's too many of those that have been made by a solo creator, right? That's why you need, a vast team, and so few teams can actually pull those off that they're quite lucrative when they land. The games industry, to be fair, and to your point, has always had a very low hit rate, right? Any individual game investment, it's like 10% chance of making back your investment at best, right? But if you're in that 10%, often you're making back 1,000x your investment, even if you are 1,000 people working for 10 years, right?
So does that kind of inform how you do things with dark arts, where
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say VC, but it it almost seems to have a VC approach where you're like, well, let's try these smaller things and see if they hook and see if we can get it off.
Exactly.
To
yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty and tragedy of the games industry is that you can have an idea and deliver it at the highest possible level, and if you're not just, I don't know, it's a bit of random luck, right? If it's not the right idea at the right time and the right audience sees it, you won't sell. And which is like, I don't know of many other industries where you can be perfect and just faceplant on launch. It's like games are so fickle. So for us, we sort of are like, okay, let's not go and make one bet and ride everything on it. Let's make 10, quarter bets and see of those 10 quarter bets, which 3 look like they have a lot of promise. Okay, let's make those 3 full bets and make another 10, little sort of investments. And that's what we saw at Meta led to the best results. And honestly, a lot of those were solo devs who were sort of like creating this really interesting new idea that, had that combination of like quality and luck, where they just happen to have the right idea at the right time and they could bring it to market. But what's the fascinating part of it is I don't think the games industry has fundamentally changed. I think game development has democratized, to your point, right? It's a lot easier for anyone to make a game. And with like the way AI tooling is, allowing individuals to produce a little more, I don't think you can actually replace a person with an AI, for the record. Not unless you want a bunch of spaghetti code you have to clean up later. But, better tooling over the past 10 years, AI tooling over the past 2 to 3 years, we can ship things faster, whether it's AAA or a solo dev. So curation is becoming a much more like robust funnel. There's so many more games out there. So that's, again, back to the dark arts thing. It used to be you could launch a social or mobile game and just have a really big user acquisition budget, spend it on Facebook and AdWords and, all the standard stuff. You just spend it on an ad network, optimize it, and off you go. Then you just sort of tune your your lifetime value against your cost per install, and Bob's your uncle, you have a game. The problem is now it's so hard to acquire users for a reasonable price because there's so much content out there that you have to sort of rethink the way you approach your users. And for us, the thing that we saw working was going community first, right? Discord communities, short form video, influencers who have their own communities. Back to Dispatch, right? Dispatch, I think, was brilliant because, Aaron Paul is a world-class actor, and he's backed by the Critical Role team. They're all world-class actors. They have a bunch of other actors who are fine, but they're not actors, they're influencers, right? They're basically people who have like big online presences. And what do you think they did when they were star characters in a video game? They posted the shit out of it, right? So I think that level of like innovation in terms of like how you frame your game and ship to those communities, that's the big thing. That's how you get through that discovery wall that, to your core point, is getting so full of games that you have to find a way around it.
Yeah, so while we're talking about this, right, one of the questions we always ask, right, is sort of what's specifically for like indies, right, in those and that market, because I'm loving the idea of make a game the community wants, not what the AAA exec wants, right? So what's the implications, in your opinion, for indies and IP when we have legal rulings like now? If you use AI, it's discoverable by default when you're using these AI tools for production, right? We're doing interesting stuff on the enterprise side, but now we have a lot of pressure by management or whatever you want to call it to use these tools, but yet it now is creating a scenario where this IP that we would traditionally see as our own now is discoverable because we're using an AI enabled tool. What's kind of your play on it?
I've got a spicy take. How spicy do you want to get? Are we good with like Scoville spiciness?
This is a podcast, bro. You can get as spicy as you want.
Okay,
absolutely.
We don't have sponsors to worry about.
Awesome.
Yeah. Now, if somebody wants to sponsor, contact us. We're open.
I was about to say, Gene would like a sponsor, though.
Insert ad here.
Yeah, we're open. Don't discourage
not be offended
sponsorship
if,
by any
like,
stretch.
yeah, if you cut my rant and replace it with a Claude ad, I will not be offended. Like, I get it. It's business, right? No, I mean, you bring up a fantastic point, and that is why I don't use AI content in anything I ship on any platform. I love AI tooling. I'm not like, some sort of Luddite, right? It's awesome. It's great for brainstorming. It's great for like your sort of ideation phase, because it's like rubber duck programming or ideation, rubber duck design, where you talk to a rubber duck and you come up with better ideas just by saying stuff, right? It's like that times 1,000. But for two specific reasons, I don't let any of that content into anything we make, right? Our marketing copy, our web copy, our trailers. We don't let anything that hasn't been touched by human hands in there, and we try to eliminate any like stock AI content that we sort of like ingest. We try to keep that out. Like, sometimes it's hard, right? With like if you do a Google search, right? That's now AI empowered, right? If you use Premiere, it's hard to sort of like squint and see, like, is this, if I hit the remix button, is that AI? What kind of AI? Is that large language model AI? Anyway, when we can choose not to, we don't. And the two reasons are: one, legal exposure, because I don't want, let's say you have a hit product, right? You're a couple million in, all of a sudden someone comes to you after a class action lawsuit in 5 years, and now you have negative that much money, right? That's the worst possible case and the most soul crushing thing you could ever deal with. And the second part is, I don't like the style. AI content has a specific style, and it sucks. It's just not good. And if not good is good enough, which is, I'm not like dunking on people who make games that have to ship quickly, and of the holy trinity of good, fast, and cheap. If they have to do fast and cheap, and they just have to get something out the door, hey, we've all got to earn a paycheck, right? If you want something good, you don't ship it with AI.
Yeah, because I almost look at that AI has issues with the reward system that gamification requires. In other words, we can go to a group of people, and the priority of the game could always be different. In other words, so what's important in one area of the country is not important in another. And AI, I don't think can adjust for those. It would be a very kind of generic response, and it wouldn't connect. And that's where I think it gets back to the storytelling. The storytelling is more than just explaining the situation. It's more than just setting a scene. Storytelling is a unique art form. I mean, sorry, I'm an old history major. So history goes back to the storytellers. And the idea of being able to give people an emotional connection that enables the technology to really show its full value. I'm getting kind of deep and philosophical on this.
I was
No,
you
hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
I think you got to have a human in the loop, because I don't know. I fancy a lot of Carl Jung in archetypes. There are some very ancient stories that are so ingrained we don't even recognize them. And so we end up telling these stories even though we never heard them before. And there's something really magical and amazing about that. So a damn clanker just can't do that.
No. I mean, think about how many people cannot go without finishing this without saying no, and knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I always bring up that I think it's so, with cartoons today. Yes, I'm an old grump. Cartoons today are not as good as they were when we were kids. I will say it.
They definitely weren't as suggestive.
They were suggestive, but almost all of our cartoons had morality at the end, or had some type of lesson. Even the Animaniacs had the wheel of morality.
You still watching Saturday morning cartoons? You still doing that? I mean, I'm giving you props.
That's still awesome. Do. Every Saturday morning, I watch 2 hours of Saturday morning cartoons.
Man. We're all busy on Sunday morning.
I might try this.
Kids.
Oh,
I might try it.
I lay in bed. I watch
just VCR playings of Saturday morning cartoons from the 80s. It's amazing what you could find.
No, at lunch today I was watching Gotchaman. Come on.
No, right now I've been watching Thundercats Mask. I'm on a huge Mask revival because the toys they re-released all the toys. So I am on a huge Mask revival. Silverhawks and then Voltron because the new Voltron movie's getting ready to come out. So
and Silverhawks was just a rematch of Gatchaman. Come on.
Yes, it was. But Silverhawks was sorry, the costumes were so awesome. But I mean, have you heard? So we've got Thundercats movies got greenlit. Voltron is done. And then they did greenlight Robotech. So
that's my generation right there, you know. But you know, I mean, even look at like, you know, I used to work for Viacom, so it's like the live action of Avatar again. It's literally the same animated story but live action, right? You know, the economy is bad when, you know, studios are doing that.
Yeah, but then I also look at Masters of the Universe. I really do think Masters of the Universe it reignited the fun of going to the movie. Because, and I'm not saying it's the greatest movie in the world. Okay, I'm not saying that. I loved it. But the thing is, the whole thing was just fun. It was like going to Flash Gordon again. I mean, you had Brian May's guitar ringing through the theater. You know, I mean, it was just. And so for me, I think we, you know, and I get on this thing that we get so wrapped up with wanting to tell the serious, gritty story, you know, the story that's going to change the world. And we forget that sometimes we just want lowbrow, non-stressful fun.
I'm so tired of construction. I'm so tired of it.
I will say
that's why people still play Bejeweled. So, you know.
Yeah, but Coray, to your point, like AI is a great sous chef. You know, I use mine as a junior dev to make boilerplate code and things that jog my memory. But you know, it's the main chef that's doing the cooking. You know, that you could taste the love, so to speak. You know, and that's something that you don't want to give it up because gaming is a human enterprise. It needs to stay that way. Yeah, that's my point on it. So yeah.
No, it's a great point, and like. No,
and that's my point, and that's all.
And that's my point. No, it's like, and the way that we're approaching large language models, right? It's a big averaging machine, right? And that's its strength and its weakness. The strength of it is if you're ever sort of working on something a little crazy, and you sort of need to gut check against a best practice, it's great at that. And that I find if I have a weird idea, I can validate it against the norm by asking a large language model what it thinks, right? The trick is, you know, if you are using AI content directly, you're getting averaging machine content. And the thing that's selling right now, as we talked about earlier, right, that 30% growth is weird ass games. And yes, it's the same stories that we've always heard, right? You know, Dispatch is, fallen hero meets new tribe and becomes assimilated. We've all read that story 10 times and it's always great, right? But it's absolutely a fresh take. You know, it's the superhero dispatcher, right? And there's no way like AI is going to come up with anything original because it can't. It's an averaging machine, right?
So before we started recording, we were talking about your friend that does Chippendale.
Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
Right. Let's important distinction.
Oh, sorry, my bad. So
no hate.
But what I'm getting at is, a lot of people don't have the skill to create something, but they got the story in their heads. So do you foresee, because we were talking about, you know, these things need to be social in nature, and we're looking for these tiny groups to make it bloom. What do you think about small groups making their own games, and then they become viral essentially because somebody who's not a game developer has spent all their time invested into creating this thing, and it might be buggy as hell because it's full of, you know, of spaghetti code, but it's a great story. Do you ever think that's going to happen in the future, or is there just something that's going to stop that from happening?
No, I think that is I think that is something that is perhaps more likely to happen with the help of AI, because it does help you sort of get past that initial fear of how the heck am I going to do this? One of the things I love is in Unreal, right? You're working on something, you're stuck. You're like, I got to get this light blinking. Why will this light not blink? And you ask the AI, and it's like, dummy, you forgot to do this. You're like, okay, shoot, okay, thank you, right? It's fantastic for, and like, how many great games did we never get to play because someone rage quit because they couldn't get the light to blink?
Yeah, a lot.
Right?
Exactly.
But I will say that there's a big difference between the initial spark of brilliance that like creates these great moments, and those moments absolutely can and always have come from non-game developers, right? If it's something the market is not delivering and you deliver it, it's the first modern combat open world game with helicopters, even if it's super janky, people love it, right? It's the first game where you roll around a piece of garbage and it keeps getting bigger and then you're picking up buildings, right? People love it, right? If you're tapping into that core fantasy that's been under serviced, you can find success. Scaling it is a different story, right? That's where you probably need to hire a team of talented game developers to help you actually like build production code and systems, because it's both sad and schadenfreude to see people who are like, oh, I've got a hit game, take that, nerds. And then 10 months later, they're like, I really need someone to help me refactor this code.
Well, you remind me of this. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna say quick. Like to me, you're describing the Valheim experience, right? Like during COVID, why did Valheim survive? Because people are like, I want the ability to virtually walk in an endless world in nature because I can't right now.
Yes,
and it's like,
yeah.
There's a great game, and then all of a sudden it's like it picks up, and then they're like, yeah, it's going to take about 3 years to actually get out of beta.
Yep.
So
Yep.
exactly.
For sure.
Well, for me, it goes back to which I thought was one of the greatest ideas. Was there was a TV show called Defiance a couple years ago. I may be loyal because it occurred in a post-apocalyptic future in Defiance, Missouri, which is right down the street, and it was the Arch, but it had a game tied into it. So the TV show was up at Defiance, the old remnants of St. Louis. The game occurred in L.A. And the game was supposed to fall in line with the TV show. So as you watch something on the show and then you logged into the game, it was to reflect from the show. They didn't think about like reruns. People are not going to start right when the TV show starts. So now they're jumping in. There's all this different content, and then they weren't able to keep up with the content. So
binge watch this. What?
Well, you can binge watch the show. The show's great. Well, the first 2 seasons are good. Third season gets a little wonky. Like a show about post-apocalyptic St. Louis is not wonky enough to begin with.
So I'm going to throw it all the way back to hardware.
Go for it.
I want to know where we're going. Like, it seems, what's the future of gaming, and how does XR and wearables play into that? Like, and it's a big question, but I can almost see some future where we have all these devices and they might be able to be woven into game experiences, but I'm not sure really how that's going to happen, because yes, VR, we can see it, we know how that works. But when I've got all this other stuff that potentially is going to actually be in the market, how is that stuff going to play in gaming? And it might be that it's part of the community, it's part of the experience, it's not part of the core gameplay, right?
Yeah, and it's funny. So Mark is writing a chapter for a book. A book series I'm working on. I probably should have mentioned this maybe earlier, but
it's okay.
It's a book on XR, VR, and AR, and it's a pretty broad survey of all of it. But the main concept of all 3 books is the future is spatial. The future is AR. Right? We're gonna laugh and be like, ha ha ha! Remember when we had monitors and cell phones? And we'll all laugh, and our grandkids will look at me like, what the hell are they talking about? So old, put them at home. So the future is, it's basically a manifest destiny, right? The future is AR glasses for your, incidental contact with technology. some form of VR glasses, whether you're plugging that headset into something or you have a dedicated headset. Probably it looks a lot like a Cambrian explosion of devices, and then a dozen form factors kind of become the dominant output. It's an exciting future, and it has the most boring gate ever. And that very boring gate is solid state batteries. Once we have solid state batteries that charge really fast, have much better thermals, they have much better life. We're talking 3 to 4 times both the battery life, the charge rate, and the thermals for, once they're at scale, a fraction of the cost with a little bit more safety. That's the moment. And so imagine the most boring possible thing. It's well, instead of a liquid electrolyte, you use a solid salt battery. It's that's the difference between now and the future. And so I think it's going to be here sooner than we think. Once we start seeing solid state electrical vehicles, then it's just a matter of scale and miniaturization and making things cheaper. So we're only a few years out from that. My prediction is 5 years from now, the world will look quite different, because not as many people will have cell phones in front of them. Not as many offices will be full of monitors. It's gonna be a very different world, and it's gonna be a lot sooner than people think.
Nope, I think you're spot on. I learned a random fact. I'm full of random facts up here. The Europeans stayed away from Africa until quinine was invented because of malaria. If you're European and you went to Africa, you died. So,
you pretty much did.
It wasn't until quinine, and then all the history after quinine with that. So you're spot on. It's all about the power, and I may add, it's also handling optics in different types of weather. Because in my field of work, one thing that we run into is if you cold soak a headset, all the water condenses on the inside of the lenses, and then on the inside of the electronics. So having something that can stand going in and out of different types of weather. I mean, these cell phones, we pretty much knocked it out. They're kind of sealed and there's a little escape valve, but HMDs, not really the case.
I don't know what you're talking about. I wear glasses all the time, and it never fogs.
Yeah.
Never.
Not at all. Never. Especially at that moment in Island of Tabor when 5 players are killing me, and I just I never fog up. No, nope, not out of frustration. No. Never happens.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, that's actually the perfect metaphor, right? Because if you think what are we on? Quest 3? So what was the Apple III like, right? I think if you dropped it too hard, your entire mobile history was deleted, right? You couldn't get a new phone. You had to get a new phone number. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you all remember an Apple III or whatever the third version of
The
Android
iPhone
was,
3,
but
yes.
pretty primitive stuff. We're on 17 now, so what's the Quest 17 gonna look like? I think that's the question.
Well, and when people realize that, I think this is why a lot of us are still kind of okay, why are we on this step back from the immersive world? Because 10 years ago was the Google Cardboard. I mean, that it took us 10 years to get to this point. And
getting back there.
Is that an iPhone 3?
That is
might
an iPhone 3, yeah.
I got
impressive.
them. I think I've got them all, but it's one of them.
Yeah, Coray, this is a pretty scary group because I'm fighting the urge right now to actually get my modular 3DOF VR headset and bring it into frame. Because back at the turn of the century of Y2K, we would actually make a modular VR headset. So I'm just fighting it right now, but
Coray, you should have seen it.
Nerds.
Yeah, you should have seen it. We wrote a timeline on EXR, and between us and Bob Stone, a majority of the pictures were our personal pictures of devices throughout the years.
That's awesome.
It's a big nerdy group, yeah. So, hey, on that note, I just wanted to ask one more question to Coray because I know he's kind of the man in this area that I'm about to ask him. And basically, the idea is, me, I'm always about. You're a brilliant resource when it comes to new developers, right? So one question I want to ask you before this ends is when you're conceptualizing an interactive space, how do you prevent, specifically when you were back with Meta, right? How did you prevent the tech first trap when you're designing, right? What's, are there gimmicks, are there concerns that we have to think about when we're designing these experiences? And I'm asking this for that developer that's listening to this podcast 3 years from now. That is the question.
Yeah, no,
Nice.
How do you get around it?
That is a fantastic question, because the products that we often saw, fall well short of expectations were the ones that were business and tech focused. It would be, okay, we think MR is the next big thing, so we have developed a checks notes puzzle game, right? Like, those didn't work because there's no love. There's no, I've always wanted to do this one thing and finally I can do it because of this technology, right? Those were the games that resonated. And to be fair, it wasn't always something that was created for the platform, right? Like Super Hot, for example, one of the best VR games. It just happens to be best on VR. It was originally a PC game. Cubism, right? I think Thomas makes that for every platform that exists. Mm-hmm. But the through line to all of these successful products is that core nugget of gameplay. Or even if you're thinking about enterprise work or serious work or education work, that core just 0 to 5 second loop of, oh, that felt really good. Or, oh, this lets me do something I've never been able to do. That's the thing to build around, right? Not a business case, not a new piece of tech, right? If that new piece of technology enables a new experience that you've always wanted, a new 0 to 5 second experience that you've always wanted to do, that's powerful, right? And now you're in that spot where you are on the bleeding edge, but it's really that 0 to 5 second loop. And then for us, and back to the dark arts thing, the thing we're always talking about is like finding the magic. And the magic for us is a game that has that 0 to 5 second loop, but then you play for 5 seconds and you can imagine what an hour or 12 hours or 100 hours is, because you can imagine all of the nouns and verbs and all the things you're going to do. And that's the magic stuff. So if you're starting a new game, don't focus on the technology, focus on the 0 to 5 seconds, and make sure it's a 0 to 5 seconds that you can then project out, right? An hour, a week, a month, a year.
I think you're touching on something that's kind of sad about XR, is that everybody that tries it is like, wow, this is magical, this is amazing, and then they never do it again. Because they're like, dude, box checked, I'm done. That was awesome. So to your point, it's cool, but I also want to do it again.
Yeah, as well as I think too many people get it for a holiday gift and they're told you need to do Richie's Walk the Plank. No, that is whoever created it, buddy. I love the game, love the Christmas sleigh, but that is not the experience to start with.
That's a good one for Thanksgiving if you want a funny video of grandma freaking out. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
you're spot on. And here's the thing, right? We're going to all laugh and be like, remember, Richie's Plank on Quest 1? That was crazy because, the first cell phones, not even the iPhone, right? What came before the iPhone, right? You wouldn't use it that much. Yes, even before the Nokia brick, right? You wouldn't use it that much because it wasn't ingrained into our daily life, right? When we have this very boring moment of, yay, we have solid state batteries, right? And everyone has AR headsets on all day. It's the same tech stack. It's the same ecosystems. It's the same developers. That's when VR is going to have that moment of everyone being like, oh man, remember Richie's Plank? We should play that again. And I think you're going to see some fantastic retention numbers, re-engagement numbers, all these people being like, wow, I turned on my headset for the first time in 10 years and I love this. That's going to be the moment.
You're saying that Atari moment for us, right?
Yes.
Basically what it equates to. It's the Atari moment, but for the millennials right now that have VR headsets and are kind of like, yeah, meh, I'm going to go back to my
exactly.
PS4.
Well, and I think Nintendo captured that every time they had a new system because they would dust off Mario. Exactly. And Mario would make everything right again. I mean, Super Mario Brothers 3, I hate that game because it's not Mario. I admit it. I can't. It's the
Wait,
one.
Is that 2?
It's the one with
2 was the one with the weird.
No, I think
Mario.
3. I thought was the one where he gets the foxtail, and they're the little map with Luigi.
Mm-hmm.
Was not a fan of it.
That's a bit of a hot take. That's a little too spicy for this call, I think.
It really is. But don't get me wrong, I love Mario games, but Nintendo really had a good.
To Eugene.
I know.
We just X'd out one possible sponsor right there.
Yeah.
Good job, Gene. They just did Harikari.
No,
They gotta do Claude ads.
I know.
Great.
Nintendo, I still love you. The Game Boy, still far way ahead of its time because the 5-second thing. I mean, think even how effective the Game Boy was. I mean, Nintendo just has a really good reputation of what you're describing. So yes, I'm giving love to Nintendo, Mario. I am so sorry.
So is this the point where we don't give love?
You have to insert Japanese translation at this point.
We love Meta. We love Meta. Meta's still the biggest investor in XR, VR, MR. Pick your R. They're still the ones putting the most money in. Have they made some very poor decisions with staffing? They certainly have. They certainly have. I believe Zuck even admitted that. He was like, I shouldn't have let Coray go. That was a mistake.
Yep.
I think I did see your name in the headline.
Yeah.
But I
think people listening to this podcast that are that know me, that was a bad mistake with Coray.
Yeah.
Hey, HTC, maybe you want to call him?
Nice.
But to me, I think this now gets into another issue that we could talk a whole nother hour about. I don't want to open the can of worms yet, but it's really, to me, leadership making a lot of these knee-jerk reactions, and they're changing course like every 36 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
we might have to censor the podcast at this point because there could be a certain legal liability based on certain comments that commentators on this podcast are about to say.
Okay,
cool.
Fair enough. But anyways, we are. So we're not going to open that can of worms on this episode. But we are near the end. So first, Coray, thank you so much for joining us. The one thing we generally like to ask is for a final protocol, where we ask from our guest, if there's a piece of advice, if there is a trend, something that they've been dying to share, of something they've been, of something coming up, or advice, or really kind of what would be your final protocol if you could share with this audience one thing either you've learned or you're kind of facing. We would love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. And that's actually a pretty easy one. Go play around with any AR headset you can get your hands on. And even if you can't get your hands on the headset, go make a prototype. In the short term, all of the platforms are looking for people who have shipped on their platform, and nobody has, right? There's no way to make money. There's no store yet. So go ship tic-tac-toe, or the simplest thing that you can ship. And now you are one of an extremely small handful of people who have shipped a commercial application on an AR headset. And now you are immediately shortlisted by these AR platforms as someone they can go to for partnerships in the future. In the long term, the speculative AI boom is probably winding down. There will still be continued investment, but the super speculative investment is probably going to go to AR. So if you want that stupid money, now is the time to start messing around with hack projects in AR.
I think you just made Dan's night.
I know.
Dan's out.
I love it.
Virtual avatar is dancing in the background for those that don't have the visuals.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's go.
Let's go.
So, I'm never going to live that down. All right. So first off, again, thank you guys for all joining. Thank you if you're listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. Please like, share, follow our pages. Really helps out. If you have any questions, thoughts, or if you are somebody who is creating something and you would like to bring it to us and share out, please, we would love to hear your story. So Coray, thank you so much for joining. And guys, in the group, thank you for joining, and we'll see everybody next time on Neon Protocol.